All right, welcome back to the program. In case you're just joining us, it's time for us to delve into our conversation for today. Like I said at the beginning of the program, we'll be looking at the IGR of states and the budgets of the states. I have my guests joining me right here. At the table is Obinnaya Uruakpa, who is the team lead and chief executive at Grand Renaissance International Ltd. Welcome to you and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nancy. Always a pleasure.
All right. Joining us virtually also from Lagos is Robert Omotunde, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Afrinvest Asset Management. Hello, Robert. Quite a while. Happy New Year. Oh, okay. My director just told me he disappeared. So when he reappears, we'll get him. Robert, please reconnect with us. All right. Let me start with you, Obinnaya. The first question is, why should Nigerians really be interested in what happens in their states? That was how I started the show this morning. Yeah. Because you see that we are always caught in that quagmire of, oh, President Buhari, any small thing, President Buhari, any little thing, Buhari, any little thing, Buhari. And come off it also, we are from states, you know, we don't call our governors or, our governors as often as we call the man at the center. Why should Nigerians really be interested in what happens in their states?
Thank you very much, Nancy, and thank you for the great job you do. Nigerians should be interested in what happens in their states because the center is just a micro of the macro, which is what makes up Nigeria. You have the national and the subnationals. You have the federal government, the state, and the local government areas. You have what they call the federal allocation and accounts that happens here all the time. All of what we make is shared in percentages. The federal government holds a percentage of that. The rest goes to the states and the local government areas. Now, the question is, what do the states do with what they get? Now, if you do proper infrastructure, then you're going to be able to grow the economy. The only president that my grandmother sees in my local government area is the local government chairman. I will always insist. So it behoves on us to understand that whatever happens at the states affects Nigeria ultimately. If I take you back to a document that was developed by Duke Adelaja in Smedan several years ago, that document is called OLOP, One Local Government, One Product. Mm-hmm. That document came about because Smedan team visited Japan. And in Japan, every prefecture, or what you call local government area in Nigeria, produces at least one thing that it has comparative advantage on.
One local government, one product.
One local government, one product. Now in Japan, it's called OVOP, one village, one product. Abuja Enterprise Agency calls it OVOP also. Now it will amaze you that every local government area produces at least one thing that can generate income. But what do you see? You see states coming to the center to share the little that has been generated from oil. Now, we are not going to continue that way with the mono economy that we run. This country, if I go by the statistics I have here, and that's a document you can find online. I'll just give you an example of Adamawa State. Adamawa State has a total of 21 local government areas. Now, the first thing I will show you here is that Demsa local government area produces maize, barite, salt. If the states took what they got from the federal and grew the cottage industries and grew the micro, small, and medium enterprise sector, which grew the Asian tigers and grew most of the economies you see, we would not struggle and would not borrow as much as we're borrowing. I listened to your talk yesterday with your panelists. That was a wonderful one yesterday. And the argument
so
over
you're an audience watcher of the
yes,
show.
Of course, you should know. Now, all of that argument over is it revenue to spending. Are we? Is it revenue? Do have a revenue generation problem, or do we have a spending sustainability or debt sustainability issue? Whichever way, I heard when you said the chicken and the egg example, I listened to you carefully. Truth be told, that if you don't produce, there are two ways you make money in business. Either you increase your volume of production or you reduce your cost of production. And yesterday in your discussion, we talked about the leakages. Professor Ken Ife talked about the leakages. Carlo from abroad gave you an idea of what we should be doing. He asked us to look at the fintech and even the subsidy, which shouldn't even happen by the Petroleum Industry Act, shouldn't happen, that we should go to the petrol stations and through the e-Naira, which the central bank has introduced, and BVNs. So unless we are lying to ourselves, when it comes to transferring money, we know how the BVN works. But when it comes to issues around using technology to grow the economy, it seems like we are hoodwinking ourselves. The other example, I had to grant an interview yesterday, and they were asking me about the e-invoicing for that the CBN has introduced. I said, there's nothing wrong with it. The world has moved on. Carlo talked about the fintechs yesterday, about how many fintechs have attracted funding. You know, I have a lot of grants. Just yesterday, MasterCard did a program with the Enterprise Development Center, and it will amaze you that 40,000 Nigerian youths are being trained by MasterCard to grow across 3 states, Kano, Kaduna, and Lagos states, states where people are marginalized. So a lot of things are going on. Young people are attracting grants of $100,000 and more, and so on. So if you look at the states, what I think is a challenge, really, is that the states, and we should pay attention to it, the states are not sweating their stuff.
Okay, I think we'll come back. We'll delve a little bit into it in a bit. Robert Omotunde is back. Robert, I hope you've reappeared. I know you're not a ghost. Can I see you now? Director, please punch Robert. Robert, what a way to come on my show this new year. My director said, he's disappeared. And I know you are not a ghost, so welcome. I welcome your appearance. Today on the show.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay,
thank you for having me on the
okay,
show.
Robert, I would also ask you the same question I posed to Obinnaya a lot earlier, which is, why should Nigerians be interested in what's happening in their states? In fact, I interviewed Dr. Franklin Ngwu, who is from the Lagos Business School, an associate professor, I think about 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about the federal budget for 2022. And he, you know, he did accuse me. He gave me that task of, Nancy, people like you should be delving into the states, what's happening into the state. And I've taken it also upon myself to do that. I do that, but not as often as I would like to. But I think I'll begin to do that as often as I would want to now. Wow. So I'm coming for you, governors. Yes, I'm coming for you, not with a gun, though, but with my mouth and with my pen and with everything I know concerning the states. So why should we be interested in what's happening in our states, for example?
I mean, thank you, Nancy. That's a very, very fantastic question, and it's because, you know, the conversation around the subnationals, the municipalities, the small enclaves of government that we have, we need to start talking about them. And truth be told, like you said, we have over concentrated and over analyzed what is happening at the center, you know. But again, that's also a reflection of the sort of government that we run. If indeed we run a federal system of government, we should have a situation where people are more interested in what is going on at the subnationals. And this is a simple way I can analyze it. The best way to touch the lives of the common man is through the local government, you know, and by extension, the state government. So if, you know, the road in front of your house, you know, is possibly a local government road or a state government road, how many of us live in places where it's the federal government road that is passing in front of your house? So that is why we need to be interested in what is going on at the state level. So it's a very, you know, crucial question to ask. And if you look at, you know, where we are right now as a country, we have a country that, if you analyze the infrastructure stock of this country as it is right now, you will be closing up to something around possibly about $1 trillion. Now, out of that $1 trillion of infrastructure stock in Nigeria, how much of those are owned by the state government or the local government as against the ones owned by the federal government? That's the way to begin that conversation, right? So, and that is why it's very particular when we are talking about the state budgets, because that budget is more likely, or more often than not, to touch the lives of the people more directly, you know, in terms of infrastructure projects, or even, you know, some of the recurrent expenditure. Look at, you know, the various or the basic necessities of, you know, health and education. The tendency is that you have more schools that are owned by state government. In fact, more schools are owned by state government and local government than schools that are owned by the federal government. At any level of education, primary, secondary, tertiary, you have more schools owned by state government than schools that are owned by the federal government. So that tells you that in terms of health, in terms of education, in the same vein, more primary health centers are owned by state government than are owned, you know, the federal government owns mostly the teaching hospitals, or the secondary level of health, unlike the primary health care that is owned primarily by the local government and by extension the state government. So it's a very interesting question to ask as we, and I know like as we go along, we'll be able to dissect some of these issues one after the other.
Okay, I'll come back to you in a bit, Robert, but a question which you also talked about earlier on, and I'm interested to know, of course, even looked at the data because I've been researching, checking out the 36 states and plus Abuja. If there's really a state that can survive without FG's monthly allocation, do you think that there are states that can survive without FG's allocation? Quickly, because I see that Robert also wants to weigh in. Robert, I'll come back to you. Yeah.
It will shock you that at the current, based on the current data, only few states can survive without FG allocation. From the IGR generated by some of these states, we have states generating 4 billion. And what's that?
Money.
Money. Where would that take them? But if you're talking about potential, I showed you just the OLOP document. There are other documents. And based on your discussion yesterday with Carlo, talking about fintechs and things that can happen, if you bring your A game to creativity, to innovation, to ideas generation, believing in all the human capital that you have, if you utilize the resources you got from federal for production, for creation, for manufacturing, if you created an enabling environment like Omotunde was talking about, for instance, a state like Abia has a mantra for her budget. If you want me, I can read that for you.
Yes.
Okay.
A state like has mantra.
A state like Abia says budget of economic recovery through industrialization.
Thank you.
Just take Aba.
Yes, that's
if you put the right infrastructure in Aba and the shoemakers in Aba produce as much as they should produce. If you got the youth, 17 local government areas, to learn to produce shoes, Nancy, if we wore the shoes made in Aba, we would not need federal allocation to grow Abia State. If you look at a state like Enugu, budget of sustained growth and consolidation, the coal in Enugu is still there. It hasn't dried up. There are other opportunities we have in Enugu. If you look at a state like Cross River, it says budget of conjugated agglutination.
To that.
Okay, I'm going somewhere.
No, budget of what?
Conjugated agglutination.
That is one governor that is always very funny with his captions. Not a problem, but the thing is,
let's speak
come
the big
on, a professor should also. I don't want to go there, but
okay,
anyway.
So let me help him. Let me help the governor of Cross River State and also bring Akwa Ibom into it. I just came back from Akwa Ibom. I just came back from training the ex-militants. And it will amaze you what I found out. In Cross River, you remember under Donald Duke, you remember all of the end of year, the Calabar
Carnival.
Yeah, you remember the Obudu Cattle Ranch. Yes. And you know when Mo had to take up the show, the studio there, and you know the rest of the story. Now, if you look at Cross River, if Cross River decides to sweat her tourism potentials, it will not need the federal government. Let's just take a short trip to Akwa Ibom State. In Akwa Ibom State, just last December, and this is from one of the organizers, it's not up to 3 days I got this fact, the Christmas village was set up in Akwa Ibom for 31 days, from beginning to the end of December. Now, what they did was that they created booths for people to use, made in Akwa Ibom items. As people came back for Christmas and the end of year festivities, they came there to purchase. This is the fact they got. They got the logistics firms to say you cannot drive into the Christmas village. They stopped them at the gate. And for everybody that took your things to your shop and set up for you, you paid them. Somebody earned money. The state earned a portion of that. Do you know how much they generated? After statistics, 2.5 billion.
From just that?
Yes, a Christmas village in 31 days in Akwa Ibom State.
Okay. Omotunde, Robert, please weigh in here. I said earlier that it's going to be a Gbasgbos show.
Yes.
Yes, and I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the states now. Yes, I'm coming for you guys. Especially as 2023 is coming now, everybody will say, vote for us. You start seeing the governors now eating corn on the road, jumping buses, and all of that, cutting people's hair. And after that, we will not see them again. The question again to you is that, can states meet their operating expenses, without perhaps generating IGR and what else again? And VAT, yes, without proceeds from VAT. Without the federal allocation, can they really meet the operating expenses?
Well, indeed, like my uncle in the studio said, there are few states.
Uncle, that sounds older.
Actually, there are a few states that can actually, very few states that can survive without the federal allocation. And I can count them at the tip of my fingers. If you take the exception of Lagos, Rivers, Delta, maybe Kaduna and FCT, I stand to be corrected, but very few of them that can, actually survive without the allocation. And I like his perspective about saying when we talk about potential and the potential of the states to actually survive on their own is there. But a potential is at best a potential until it is converted. When it is converted, that is when you can talk about sustainability or, whether a state can actually, fend for itself. And that's where we need to start having conversations. It's easier to, in economics, we call it helicopter money, where, money that you really have not sweated for. We go to Abuja every month and we share FAC allocation, and it's easy money, right? But even at that, we are beginning to see that the level of infrastructure debt that we have in, most of our states, the FAC allocation is not sufficient to cater for them. I mean, just look at Lagos State, for example, is going to be spending, based on their budget, about 1.7 trillion naira in 2022. And I dare say that close to, I know portion of the funding will come from debt as well. But if you take out the portion that's coming from debt, the state, for example, is able to fund at least close to 60 to 70% of its budget using its own internally generated revenue, right? So Lagos, for example, is one of the states that can survive even if federal allocation is not available. I mean, we have instances in the past, I think about a decade ago or more, when Lagos state government actually lived without federal allocation. And indeed, that was the time that, because there was a fracas between the Lagos state government and the federal government at that point in time, it actually helped Lagos state to build internal capacity. And today, Lagos state government is better for it. And that is the line we need to begin to toe, in terms of restructuring our resources. We always talk about resource control. Let states manage the resources that they have. So maybe that can help them to begin, because there are some states that possibly will not have the easy money. If you say let states manage their resources, the easy one is the oil that most states in the Niger Delta and some part of Southeast and Southwest we have, right? But in the northern states, as we speak now, we've not seen, any state that is oil producing as we speak. So it might be a struggle initially, but I dare say that there are so many opportunities that they can also tap into from agriculture, right? From the primary agriculture, we begin to add value, and make even proceeds coming from the farm, add more value to them to generate more revenue. So indeed, if we are not going to be lazy as a country, we are a country that is blessed, in terms of natural and human resources. All we just need to do is for us to be able to manage them. So we need proper managers as we are going into this election period, right? We need proper business managers, right, in quotes, because there's so many of us that will not run our businesses the way we run the states. So all we just need to do is to have a business mindset when we're running, a state. And I mean, with that in place, we just find out that there are lots we can do. I mean, there are so many decisions we take as a country at state level, at federal level, that if you know what implications they have on your revenue generating capacity, we will not even try to, take those decisions. As economists, I believe that human beings are rational when they are faced with reality. But for as long as we continue to go to Abuja to collect, and collect, there are a lot of things that may not actually, think inward and see how they can, change their story for good.
Okay, now from what we're saying now, if we take a look at states that have the highest revenue, should we now proceed to say that Lagos State is the richest state in Nigeria because of it can survive? It generates about 60% of its funds through IGR. Should we now say that perhaps Lagos State is the richest state in that sense. The second question is also, which states have the highest IGR? I see you've really prepared for me, and I like that. You even came with your laptop. You came ready for me.
Yes.
You know, so which states have the highest IGRs? We can just take like 3, 4, the first 5 states with the highest IGR.
Okay.
Then I'll come back to you, Robert, in a bit.
Okay. Before I answer you, I was just going to pick up from where Robert stopped, if you permit me, Nancy. Now, I'm going to be very blunt here. The Chairman House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Buba Yusuf, traveled to China. And when he opened his box, he found out he forgot his cream and strolled down the road to buy cream. When he came back from buying the cream, the wife said, "Let me see what you've bought." And he brought out the cream. The wife opened it and laughed him to scorn. Guess what he bought? Shea butter.
That is, my people call it okume, or they call it ori.
Ori.
Yes, ori.
Ma, between Niger and Kebbi, there's a tussle who produces more.
Shea
but it will shock you that Nigeria is not playing in the shea butter global alliance.
And we have shea butter, because I know I've done shows on it.
Don't go to Yam. Nigeria is supposed to be the greatest producer of yam.
Cassava.
Good. Now you have the rice pyramid, which makes a lot of sense. Let's not go into the issue of whether we should have moved it to Abuja or whether it should have remained in the bushes and whatever. The optics of it, I understand. But the rice paddy, every rice mill needs at least 2 million tons to get their machines operational every year. So the central bank is doing all of those intervention funds and so on. Ma, let me even, before I answer you directly, give you one grim statistics. What should bother us now is that 10.97 trillion or more than 51% of the budget of these states put together will be spent on recurrent expenditure. Meaning that some states now, I saw your opening statement, you said everybody should be concerned about all their states. Some states have planned for how many SUVs that will be bought. There's something that came up in your program yesterday over how much is consultancy for the railways, $300 and something million.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Not for rail, for
consultancy.
Yes.
Good. I need to check out those figures. Now look at Anambra State, ma. I'm answering you indirectly. I'm coming from the back. Because Anambra has no business being at the bottom of the least budgeting states. That's the fact I have here. It's not among the top 10 on figures that have been budgeted. But Anambra has done something right. Even with the Soludo inauguration, the budget was going to cost over 500 million. I said, no, we are not doing anything. We are going, he said he's going to drive in Austin Motors, he's going to wear the traditional attire, and then volunteers should appear at the stadium. It's not time for contracting. We have to feed first before you start awarding contracts for inauguration. The state is about to start. And when the state says it's a budget of consolidation, they know what they're saying. So to answer you, ma, the states that can sustain themselves, number 1 is Lagos State on IGR, and this is National Bureau of Statistics. This year, by the second quarter, FCT shot up and came second. But before that, it was Rivers that was ranking second with over 80 billion. Then after that, you start counting states like Delta and a few other states, including Edo. It's amazing that Imo State is there. But what is a state like Kano doing below the number 6th position? Kano has 44 local government areas, ma. Kano Metropolis in the center, where I've been several times, is 15 local government areas put together. What do you call it, that Louis Vuitton, the hide and skin that Louis Vuitton uses for bag is from Kano. Facts. At a point, but as I speak, I don't want to call their names. Foreigners have almost taken over the tie and dye their market. The governor then went in and said, no, there are a few areas you should allow Nigerians to play in. If you go to Ghana today, there are if you don't have up to about 300 million, you do not get into the areas where MSMEs should play.
Yeah, so they've been fighting with us on that.
Yes, so the point is that every country that is serious, every state that is serious protects the MSME sector in her country. And when you grow that MSME sector, you inadvertently grow your own economy. So to answer you directly, there are enough states that can take care of themselves. But let me go back to what I said in my opening statement, and Robert alluded to it. Every state can stand. We don't need to merge states. By the facts that I have staring at me in the face here, Nancy, many of your governors spend more time in Abuja. As I drove to your studios here, I saw more SUVs on Asokoro extension than are in Japan. I think we'll drive more SUVs, and each of them will bulletproof. It's worth over 100 million. If we reduce the leakages and applied the money to production, like you said, we should have a production mindset. We should have a business mindset. If we had the kind of leaders, thank God it's 1 year to election. Paying attention to your state is about who you are going to elect next time. Please, even if you're not going to vote, send a message to your villagers and say, let us listen to what these people are going to say. I was listening to Governor Wike speaking in Kaduna the other day. He said that we don't win elections. This is not America, where you win election by advertising in the media. You have to do one-on-one. You have to get the heart of the people before you ask for their hands. We need to get in there and ask our people, which local government area have you developed? People are producing so much. I can afford to bring you all the statistics on the one local government, one product. But the things they are producing in Umuahia North, do they even get to Aba? Okay.
Let's bring in Robert here. The question also, I know we can talk about this for a whole day, which we've also raised. Obinnaya has talked about IGR. Another thing which I try to look at is, okay, if we're saying IGR, but we also need to look at IGR per population. I hope you understand what I mean, Robert, because in terms of what IGR, are the states generating per population. For example, I don't even know the data we have anymore about population in Nigeria. I want to take Lagos, for example. I know that Lagos could have like 20 or 21 million people, but some people will also say 15 million. So the thing is that let's even start by counting how many we have, but that's a discussion for another day. But whatever it is, if you take a look at it, does that make sense? IGR per population. The second question also for you is that of the budgets. If we take a look at the budgets which Obinnaya raised earlier, that statistics, I have also seen it. In fact, I saw it towards the end of last year, and I really was so sad, you know, that more than 50% of the budget of states this year will be spent on recurrent expenditure, not on capex expenditure. For Nigerians, and we're saying you should be interested in what's happening in your state. I'm interested in what's happening in my own jurisdiction, the two states I'm from now, because my state of origin is Delta. If I want to go for election, they will tell me to go back to Delta. But I'm married to an Enugu man. So I know that Delta signed the budget, Okowa signed the budget of 479 billion, I think, last year. I think, in December or thereabout. In fact, it was jacked up at the House of Local Assembly. There he presented about 469, so they jacked it up to 479 billion. You mentioned Enugu earlier. Ugwanyi sent 186.3 billion, no comma, nothing, no full stop. They passed it for him like that. That's for Delta and Enugu. So why I'm saying this is that as a Nigerian, go on right now and check out what your state has budgeted, what the governor is doing. So, Robert, over to you. And you can also give me experience of your state if you're also interested in your state. What state and how much? And you too.
Yes, I have them.
Okay. So that's interesting conversation, and I like the way you, personalizing it.
Yeah.
Right? So I think where the conversation should start from is where is your ideal state? Is it where you live or where you
reside
from?
Yeah.
You know, for me, it is where I live. Right. My parents have my father is from Ekiti. But I am a Lagos born. So in all my credentials, you will not see anywhere near.
So I should be from 3 states.
And if I'm going to ever contest an election in this country, it will be in Lagos. Because that's where I have known all my life. That's where I have lived. Now, I work in Lagos. All the taxes I earn, I pay in Lagos. Right? So where I pay taxes is where my heart is, not the state I originated from, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, I do.
So that said, if we look at population to IGR generated, right? In Lagos, you can argue that Lagos is perhaps the most populated state in Nigeria. You know, maybe Kano and Lagos. We always argue which state is more populated. But if you look at population of Lagos relative to Kano, you know, the difference between those two states are barely, the difference is barely 1 million in terms of population, right? So if Lagos is 21, maybe Kano is 22 or thereabout. Now, the issue then is, why is Lagos State revenue generating capacity is so wide. The gap between Lagos and Kano is so wide, right? So that should tell you that it is not enough to have the population. It's not enough to have a productive population. And what makes your production, your population productive? It's a function of the opportunities that exist within that state. Lagos State has or is housing most of the headquarters of most of the banks, right? We have few industries that are sited here in Lagos. We have a lot of development. There is an Apapa port in Lagos, where we clear most of the goods. So you just find out that when you look at activities, and by the way, for most people who live outside of Lagos, the dream of most people in the rural villages is to be in Lagos, work in Lagos, and probably stay in Lagos. Because people believe that you can make more money in Lagos than you can make elsewhere. So that means Lagos has been able to build for itself that capacity. Perhaps it also boils down from the fact that Lagos was sometimes the capital of Nigeria and is still benefiting from that, which is why some states will have a policy to say, some countries, for every 50 years, they will always shift the capital of their country so that, over time, you just find out that all the states will enjoy that level.
I think it's Bangladesh that has done that now.
But I think the point I'm trying to make here is the population is not enough. While we need to analyze that data should not be taken hook, line, and sinker so that we don't miss important points. What Lagos State has been able to do that is working for it, and check their numbers. The IGR from PAYE, that is personal income tax, is what accounts for the biggest chunk of internally generated revenue from Lagos. What does that tell you? It means that most people that are contributing those taxes are working in Lagos and are earning well. Not just that, Lagos has been able to build an efficient system that is then able to collect, those revenues from the state, because there are so many other states where revenues are being made, but is there an efficient system to collect, those taxes and ensure that people are actually paying taxes?
Okay, Robert.
Right? So the first form of tax you want to look at is the direct form before we start looking at other things you can get from value-added tax, and that is when developing the state to the point of attracting investors to that state that will create job opportunities, and then government can earn some good income.
You know what, Robert? Let me just ask you this, and in 40 seconds, please answer, because we have just a few minutes to end the program. And I want to bring in this dimension. COVID-19 hit the whole world in 2020. We were on a lockdown. The impact, I don't know if anyone has really studied it, but while I was also thinking through this program, I do also know that some people, because of the pandemic impact, may have moved from urban areas back to rural areas because of poverty, because of hardship, and all of that. If you're not able to get some of these interventions by government, they may have moved back to states. What kind of burden and is that having on states now? And how can states begin to unlock economic prosperity to create jobs for these people? Because some people will really leave Lagos back to their villages within this time. It's just that we really are a very poor country with data. These are the kind of things we should be tracking so that we'll know how to really improve the lives of people. Yeah.
You're correct. The way we also should look at it is most of us want the white collar jobs where, I finish school and I get a job and I'm being paid salaries, and nobody is looking at where we have the low hanging fruits where people can actually earn a lot. Agriculture for the rural areas, right? And sometimes when we talk about agriculture, it sounds like a cliche, but the truth is that our effort in agriculture today is at best primary. No value addition. We go to the farm, we plant the right paddies, we harvest, we sell to the international market or locally, as the case may be. But what about the point of addition, value addition? And the guest in the studio mentioned somebody buying shea butter, somewhere outside the country, right? So the person possibly imported from Nigeria and have added some value. So you take your cocoa from Nigeria, sell in metric tons, $2,500 per metric ton, and then it transforms into chocolate and comes back and you sell it for $10,000. Just look at that. The value addition creates a lot, and that is what we need to begin to do, even in the villages, right? The best is to site a chocolate manufacturing plant. It's possibly somewhere in the southwest, not in Lagos, and then from there you can, export to other parts of the country. The quality is good enough. I'm just using that as an example of so many things that we need to begin to look at. And that's why that's how you can begin to create jobs in the rural villages, and then it will impact on the economic lifestyle.
Okay, as we close, Obinnaya, you're closing. Like I said, we can't finish this discussion because there are many dimensions which I'm willing to peel, subsequently. Many, what models can also create economic prosperity, different for even the regions, those that are suffering insurgency and all of that. But I promise our viewers we'll do more of that subsequently. So your closing remarks.
Okay, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. What did Singapore do? Go and read from third world to first. When Singapore, a landlocked nation that gets 60% of her water from catching water in the hills, artificial hills, when Singapore realized it was landlocked, but discovered, you talked about data, did a bit of a research and found out that companies in Singapore were flying out broken down machines, temporarily broken down machines, back to their home countries. Singapore decided to look at the educational system. If you look at the budget, what percent of our budget goes into education? Singapore invested in building the capacity of her people. And over time, they approached those companies and said, we can repair these machines. And the companies looked at their books and found out that Singaporean kids could repair those machines. As I speak to you today, Singapore is number 1 on 126 levels on the Human Development Index. This is fact. Do your research, you find out. Singapore is number 1, almost. Educationally, Singapore is ranking almost number 1 with Finland and a few other countries. What have they done? Talking about Finland, teachers earn more in Finland than other professions. What does that tell you? Capacity building for her people. What about Michael Okpara? What did Michael Okpara do that Rauf Arebeshola copied with the OES program and did it very well? What did he do? He looked at the Southeast then and said, what can we do? They replaced meat with egg and started the farm settlement system. On one morning, Michael Okpara woke up and had commotion at his gate. Guess who it was? A farmer. The farmer came and said that nobody was buying his egg. There are 2 challenges that MSMEs have. Access to finance, which the central bank is trying to do with the post-COVID-19, which is the question you asked, with intervention funds and so on. My question is, what capacity do the people have to utilize that money to grow the areas? What have the states done to grow the capacity of their people? I was in Abia State to train the people, and I found and I asked them 17 local government areas. If I asked you for Gari in Abuja, will you send to me? They say, one day, we'll send it to you. Then when I got to you, I saw the what do you call that? They gave me from fisherman soup. And as I ate fisherman soup and atama soup, I asked them, where do you get this from? They say, from Oron. I said, if I have crayfish, it will shock you that between November last year, a bag of crayfish sold for 94,000.
Yes, expensive.
By December, it went to 150K.
Yes, that I can testify to.
So I will ask you one last question before I round off. Michael Okpara introduced the farm settlement system, and with the farm settlement system, every school in the Southeast, now almost every home in the Southeast had poultry at the backyard, and schools now replace meat with egg. Finally, did you get hamper?
No, we've got to go.
Go and investigate village hamper. You see what I'm telling you.
We've got to go because we'll continue this discussion on another day. But thank you very much for coming. That shows you came prepared for me and nice. So that's the much we can take. I've been speaking with Obinnaya Uruakpa, team lead, chief executive at Grand Renaissance. I've also been speaking with Robert Omotunde. I hope Robert is still there, chief investment officer, Afrinvest Asset Management Ltd. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing this today. But like I said, this is not the last of it at all, because there are a lot of things we haven't looked at, and there are still a lot of things we will really talk about subsequently, especially as we move towards the 2023 elections. Everybody, Nigerians, open your eye. Open your eye. Let's start with even getting our PVCs, and let's also take a look at who are those that will be representing us, and the discussion will definitely start from where we come from. I am Nancy Najib. Be the best you can be, and be the change that you want to see. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye now.